Welcome to Love You Bro Podcast. I am Jude Davella. This is my baby brother, Jamie Davella.
What it do?
And we have a really, really exciting guest to bring on today. We're going to talk a little Royals baseball. We're going to sit down and talk a little bit with Brian McRae and what his career was like and
B-Mac.
just a lot of the stuff he had going on, man. So we're looking forward to that and got some cool questions there. I want to talk a little bit about our sponsors. We got a new sponsor that's come on that's going to be a big sponsor for us this year, and that's Proactive Solutions. Proactive Solutions is a top woman owner-owned and run business, delivers infrastructure solutions and IT architecture, design, and consultation services to clients from startups to Fortune 100 companies. So thank you to Proactive Solutions. Also, we want to thank Primetime Transportation. Primetime Transportation is going to be one of our sponsors. You can reach Primetime at 913-484-1234 or primetimeassistant.com. Start lining up your transpo for Yazoo, any concerts coming to town, Royals, Sporting KC Currents. There's a lot of concerts and stuff coming up. So grab your transportation. We got sedans, Suburbans, Sprinters. So we want a big thanks to Proactive Solutions and Primetime Transportation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So some great sponsors. And then let's just get ready to talk a little bit about the Royals, bro, in this 29-19 start.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, I just want to say, be sure to listen to Love You Bro podcast anywhere you find your podcast. Then you can follow us on X, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the like button. It helps us out a big way. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Subscribe to that YouTube channel, man. We need to pick up on followers and love you guys to follow our show and also to follow us on social media to see who our next guests are going to be. So
and we have some great ones lined up. I mean, we have some big boys lined up.
We have some cool people coming up that we don't want to give away yet until we get a little bit closer. But we got some big time people coming on that are going to join our show. And we've just been fortunate and blessed enough that we've been around the sports industry for so long, and that I've been blessed with primetime assistants to do work for some of these guys. So it's been really fun reaching out to them and having these guys say they want to be a part of our podcast and come on to kind of help us out. So just be looking at our social media and watching to see who we're bringing on next. But again, bro, this 29-19 start in this Royals team, I mean, to me, it reminds me a little bit of the 14, just kind of the energy in the city. Hopefully it's going to pick up. Hopefully we're going to get some better attendance because these kids are playing some ball right now.
Yeah, and I think it will. I was a little disappointed to hear this weekend when they had the 14-15 team in town. I guess they had big attendance Friday night, but then Saturday and Sunday were kind of lackluster.
Right.
But I think it's I think it's also kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop, and they've been, after 15, they won it. They kind of, it was disappointing. It's heartbreak. I mean, yeah. But, and I will say this, leading up to it and when they brought in Lugo, brought in Waka, and they, obviously they made the trade for Reagans last year, I was like, okay, cool. They got some pitching and, was excited about it, but I'm excited every opening day, but it's kind of led into where I'm stoked now to watch games and see, right. I'm paying attention. And even if I, go to bed early, I'll still look at, I'm like, get up in the light. Did we win if we're on the,
of course.
The West Coast? So it's really exciting and they're doing some good things. They have some hitting issues to take care of.
For sure.
Right now it's kind of a couple guys carrying it, but they still find a way to win games and people might go 1 for 16 Renfroe and then he hits a home run or it's crazy. It's
just so wild to watch. Like I said, because what the pitching done. The pitching's been just amazing. This first part of the year, whatever.
Lugo's been insane.
Yeah, but you see like some of the hitters where like you just talked about where some of the hitters like guys aren't hitting. Then all of a sudden you come up and like you're down 1 or 2, and that's all of a sudden I'm looking on my phone or something. It's like Nelson Velasquez 3-run home run, and you go win the game 3-1 or 4-2 or whatever. So our pitching staff's been good. It's been a lot of fun. I think fans will start coming to the ballpark probably as we get a little bit closer towards, the All-Star break, if they continue to play this way. But you and I talked about something I remember we used to go back and forth in 2016. And we were like, God, these guys are horrible. They started trading away everybody. Guys started going to different teams and stuff. And we talked about it. But you and I always talked about, would you take, if someone told you back in 12 and 13, you're going to go to 2 World Series and you're going to win 1, and then you guys are going to suck for the next 10 years, would you take it? I always said because
every
it was
day and twice on Sundays.
Because for 30 years we were non-relevant. So it was like if somebody told you we were going to be in the 14 or 15
First of all,
series,
I think they was bullshitting because I'm like, we've been bad for. I was like, dude, are you kidding me? Yes, absolutely, and we can suck for another. But you get a taste of it, and you see other small market clubs be able to compete, and they make good decisions, and they make and I think just the overall culture is changing,
right?
And I think Witt was the first big. He was the first big chip to fall that people were going to say, hey, what's he going to do? And, John Sherman showed his dedication to the city and re-upping to him a really, really big deal. And I think that kind of, falls in line, and it'll be interesting to see how the stadium project goes and where it goes. But I tell you what, it'll be really, really cool to see if they're winning and they're playing meaningful baseball in August and the deadline comes, and if they go get another bat or they go get somebody in their bullpen, whether it's another closer or setup guy. And once again, because I know in 14 and 15, the K was as crazy, and I've been to a lot of Arrowhead games that were lit in the loudest stadium, but the K was absolutely nuts.
Yeah, that wild card game against the A's, and then you and I, we were blessed. We were blessed to go to a couple of the World Series games against the Giants, and then we went to a couple of the World Series games against the Mets that we went to, and to see the enthusiasm and everything there. How cool would it be here in Kansas City to see us be relevant come August, come September, and then all of a sudden we're relevant, and then the Chiefs have a home game on Thursday night against the Ravens to drop their banner.
And that's what's crazy. We've never been good at the same time. The Chiefs and Royals have never been good. No. And that is so weird to me. That is the weirdest thing, that they've never been at the same time good.
Yeah, it would be super cool for us to be able to witness that, for you and I to be able to go to one game.
So kind of like the other waiting for that shoe to drop. It makes me scared if the Royals continue to win. It's like, oh shit, something going to happen. I know that we've never had.
But how cool would that be, bro? If we were able to go,
the city deserves it
with your daughters, with Minnie, with Teddy, with Carly, to be able to go to a Saturday afternoon game at Kauffman Stadium and show, them the Royals.
Teddy's wishful thinking, bro.
and then be able to take him over to Arrowhead. I've been blessed because Carly's older.
Yeah.
So Carly being older, I was blessed to take her to the World Series in 14 and 15, pick her up from school, go to game 4.
Cool. Yeah. And so many of our friends were able to do that, experience that experience, which is so awesome.
But blessed to be able to do that game 4 with Carly, where we beat Baltimore to go to the World Series. Pick her up from school, take her to the game, and then for her also to be able to go to the AFC Championship game with me when we beat Tennessee to go to the Super Bowl. So hopefully it'd be cool for your girls, for Carly, for Minnie and Teddy to be able to see some stuff like that, or for just you and I to be able to enjoy going to a Royals game on a Saturday and then going to Thursday night and watching a banner drop for another back-to-back Super Bowl championship.
That's right.
Being able to see that again. So that'll be too much fun. But listen, let's look forward to right now, man, bringing on our guest and bringing on someone we've known for a long time, man. And
he's a legend, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a legend.
Yeah,
he's a legend.
It's awesome that BMAC took time out of his time took time out of his day, to come into our studio here at Nimble Brewing at 17th and Oak, where we shoot our shows. And just welcome BMAC to the show, and let's see what BMAC's got to bring to the table.
Let's get it.
All right. Hey guys, we just want to welcome you today to our Love You Bro podcast, and bringing a special guest on, someone I've known for quite a few years, and a guy that we've watched, Jamie and I have watched for a long time as we were growing up playing baseball here in Kansas City, and saw a little bit of his football days when he was back in high school. But we want to welcome Brian McRae to our podcast today, man.
Thank you.
What up, B-Mac? Appreciate you being on.
Thank you for having me on, and it's good to catch up with you guys. It's been a while.
It's been a minute.
It's just we appreciate you taking time out of your day to be on the show today.
No problem at all.
Yeah, a little bit. So starting off, B-Mac. So you in high school, you were a second team All-State in football, correct?
I don't know any of my high school stuff. You're telling me. I know they have a banner at Blue Springs High School that has my number, I think, in the year I graduated, but I don't know.
That's modesty. That's modesty. That'd be like, I remember that. And then the first team baseball. And then so you got drafted, and you got drafted in the first round, correct?
Yeah.
So when you were coming up, did you think you were going to go in the first round, or did you have
an idea? I had no idea, because the draft is a little bit different how it's situated now than it was back in 1984 and 85. I had more scholarship offers in football.
Sure.
And more people were talking to me about football than baseball. So I thought that I had, a chance to play college ball, but not baseball. Right. And then later in my senior year down in Florida, because I played high school football here, high school baseball down in Florida.
Okay.
So later in my senior year, then I started to hear a little bit more buzz about the baseball draft coming up in June. And then I played Legion ball here for Fike in Blue Springs. And that's where I was at a Legion tournament when I got drafted. But all along I thought that I was going to play college football and go to KU.
And then go to KU. So then who calls you when you get selected? Is it?
I was gone.
Okay. You weren't even.
No, it's so like I said, it's a different deal. I was playing in a Legion tournament, I think in Omaha.
Sure.
And they call your house.
I guess it's like, there's no cell phones. There's no cell phones.
And I was out. Because it wasn't like you sat around during the draft and waiting. You didn't know what was going on. So they called the house, and I found out a couple hours later after I'd been drafted.
Sure.
So
it wasn't the hype and the big deal.
No, it wasn't
like it is right now.
Yeah.
It was real low key.
Sure. So back then when you're getting drafted in baseball, like you said earlier in your high school year, did you think you were going to go to college and maybe play both? Was it a possibility of playing football?
It was a possibility of playing both because that's why I picked KU.
Right.
It was between KU and Mizzou.
Okay.
And Marty Patton, who played with my father on those Royals teams, he was the head baseball coach at
KU. Okay.
At KU at the time.
I remember that.
And Mike Godfrey was the football coach.
Okay.
And they had a decent relationship where I was going to be on a football scholarship, and they were going to allow me to play baseball. And at Mizzou, I got hooked up with Phil Bradley in the recruiting process there.
Okay.
And he told me, he was one of the guys that was straight up with me. He's like, I probably wouldn't come to Mizzou if I were you, if you were going to try to play both baseball and football.
Right.
Because he did it.
Right.
And he said they made it real difficult for him, and it was tough to do.
Right.
And they weren't real keen on him playing both sports.
Okay. I remember Phil Bradley. I remember him well.
And so I appreciate his honesty because
that's awesome.
He talked me out of going to his alma mater.
Of course.
I at the time I had better friends, going to Blue Springs.
Right.
More of my friends they stayed in state and went to Mizzou or Missouri State.
Right.
They weren't going over to KU. So it wasn't a popular choice for me to choose KU. And I really, at the time, until I spoke with Phil Bradley and did my visit at Mizzou, Mizzou was number one and KU was number two.
Right. Part of, where we know each other was, and how I got into the personal assistant world, and doing some stuff, doing personal assistant wise. And I'm thinking back in those days when guys were coming out, they need guys like you. Like you said, you had Phil Bradley to kind of lean on, and to kind of be able to ask advice to. Part of what we did in our personal assistant world was we reached out to the older guys to be able to talk to some of the younger kids because we thought that was so important. Because I used to always tell guys, look, I do assistant work, I do this, but when you guys need somebody, man, you need to ask the older guys. Ask the older guys who walked the walk you're walking and done this. They've been recruited, they've gone to D1 schools, they've been drafted. Talk to those guys, man. Ask them questions. And I think that's so important now, especially now with the way things are going, is to be able to lean on older guys like you. But that was really cool that Phil Bradley was a guy that you could ask questions to.
And in the recruiting process, you get a lot of people telling you things that they're just trying to sway you to different schools for different reasons, and they're not really truthful with you. And that's what I really appreciate about Phil, because we didn't know each other that well. He played against my father.
Right.
And I'd watched him, I watched him play. He was a Mizzou legend. But he didn't have to be that candid and honest with me.
Right.
And he was, and I appreciated that because as a 17-year-old, I was hearing all these other things.
Of course.
And, I was probably making decisions on where I was going to go to school for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And he set me straight as far as what's going to go on, how it's going to happen, and why probably Mizzou may not be the best choice for me.
Was your pops, who's obviously legend? I mean, your father he's a legend. Was he involved in your process of recruiting?
Not much at all.
Decision making, anything?
No. Basically, he said, write down pros and cons of all these schools that are recruiting you, and what do you like about? And I did 4 or 5 visits. What do you like about campus? What do you like about the environment that they had you in? What do you like about where they took you around on campus and who they introduced you to and who you're going to be dealing with, position coach things like that. And, he let me pretty much make my decision on my own. And the biggest factor once I got drafted was in 4 or 5 years of playing college football, where would I be?
Right.
And in 4 or 5 years playing minor league baseball, where would I be?
Right.
And I felt that I had a better chance of playing baseball at a high level than I did football. And, do you really want to go to school if you're just going to be going to school to play ball?
Right.
You might as well just start playing ball. And then it was looking at spring practices and football 2-a-days and all those things. And I was already getting beat up playing high school football.
Right.
So I was like, do I want to beat my body up for 5 years?
Sure.
Or I can play the safer sport in baseball, and in 5 years I can be close to the big leagues and not be in the big leagues. So that was kind of my deciding factor then.
Which is awesome. And then I was looking in 1987, you and your pops were the first father-son combo to line up in a
86.
game. 86. Okay.
Yes, it was spring training after
Which
they
is
won
so cool. That is
after
the
they
coolest
won the
thing.
World Series.
Yeah.
In 86, I got to go because most first round picks go to spring training with the team the next year.
Right.
And they usually keep you around for a couple of weeks or so. And I got to play in a few games, spring training games.
How cool was that?
With the guys
was this
that were on the
surreal to see
85.
pops out there?
It was just cool because a lot of those guys I'd been around for a long time as a kid because I was a ball boy, bat boy. I worked in the clubhouse. I did a lot of that while I was young. So, half that team, the 85 World Series team, was around when I was younger.
God, that's so cool.
Running around the clubhouse
that's so cool, man.
as a bat boy and ball boy. And then I got to play a couple spring training games with them and and be around and be in spring training with them.
Absolutely.
So it was a cool deal to be able to do all that.
And you could also tell when you were when you were coming in the league, you had a lot of composure, and a lot of that probably had to deal with being around clubhouse. Like you see guys like like Bichette Jr. or Mahomes that fathers played in the league. And they were around that, and just kind of you grew up. It wasn't bigger than you; it was just kind of natural, and you felt comfortable and you're mature.
Biggest thing that I learned from being in the Reds clubhouses when my dad played on those teams in the late '60s, early '70s with the Reds.
God, that's amazing.
And then getting here to Kansas City is just how to conduct yourself.
Right.
And speak when you're spoken to, especially when you're young. Keep your mouth shut and your ears open. Observe things.
Right.
See who the hardest working guys. I was impressed by the hardest working guys on the team were always some of the best players.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
So that was something that stuck with me. Your best players are your hardest workers.
That's so cool.
And watch how guys work. So I would go to the ballpark early and just see who'd be the first guys out on the field getting their work in. And some of them got work in without any coaches around at all.
God, I love that.
Some guys would go out with other coaches, but there's other guys, like George Brett would go in the cage by himself.
Sure.
Right.
And he'd figure some stuff out before the hitting coach came, but he would be there the break of dawn. Those guys are out there getting some work in and figuring a lot of things out on their own before the coaches even came. So that was something that I was like, these guys are good, but they still work on things to get better, and they don't have to have the coaches out there hand holding them.
Sure. Right.
They're figure out some things on their own because it's their careers, it's their life.
Absolutely.
Right. And not to switch to sports, but with you saying something like that, and I know you noticed that because I know you're a Kansas City guy. You're in Kansas City all the time, and I know you love sports. We see you at KU games, we see your Chiefs games and things like that. But you watch a kid like Patrick Mahomes, and the stuff you hear from people is that guy's out there working before anybody else, and he's the last one to leave the field. So when I hear you talk about guys like that went to work like that, I'm sure he learned a lot of that from growing up in the clubhouse watching his dad play.
And when you do it a lot, it's nothing special. That's just part of what you do. So it wasn't like they were doing extra work.
Right. Sure. Right.
That was just what they do. That was part of how they got themselves ready for the season. They showed up early.
Right.
And they stayed late. They did little things. Is nowadays you see kids, I'm putting in extra work and I'm grinding. No, that's what you do.
And they tell you about that, don't they? They tell you that they put that work in.
Right. Those guys are out there. They weren't making a big deal about it. They just put work in.
Yeah.
And they put work in consistently every day.
Sure.
And that was something that as a kid, I was like, wow, okay, it's fun.
Right.
But
that's what it takes.
But that's what it takes.
Right.
It takes week after week, day after day. You have to be consistent in your approach and consistent with the way your work habits are. And I saw that, and I was fortunate enough to be around guys that worked hard.
Sure.
Right.
And they made it look easy, but they made it look easy because they worked
so hard. And I think one of the hardest things, and you can agree to this, is to hit a baseball in the major leagues. I think that is the hardest thing. All this talk recently about NFL guys that can play in the NBA and NBA guys. I don't know many that could go in and sit in there with someone bringing it 97 from the left side of the dish.
Now you can put a baseball player and an NBA practice and have him shoot free throws or do things.
Right.
And
You can knock down some J's,
and
right?
he looks like he somewhat can do it.
Right.
And you can put some guys out there to run some routes and do some things and practice some football, and they may look like they can.
Sure.
They
Right.
can
Compete.
compete a little bit. They can hang. But you put a bat in the NFL player's hand or an NBA player's hand and just throw the ball 80 miles an hour. Or watch some of those guys throw a baseball.
Yeah, exactly right.
But yeah, hitting the baseball is tough. The guys that do it well make it look easy, like in any sport.
Sure.
It's sports specific, your hand-eye coordination. I think the toughness of baseball is what drives a lot of good athletes away from the game.
Right.
Sure.
Because it's hard.
Yes.
Right.
And you're
Right.
going to fail a lot. And people don't want to fail.
Right.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's the game of baseball is a game of failure.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have to be good with that. And a lot of guys aren't.
That's hard. It's a hard thing.
Let's talk a little bit about the team and where it is right now. This team right now is coming out. They weren't sure what they were going to get from some of these guys. Right now, they're 10 games over 500. I mean, where do you see some of these guys? And then tell us a little bit about just what we were talking about there, about Bobby Witt, what he brings to the table, and where he probably learned a lot of the same stuff, correct? Like growing up in
Yeah, I
the
played
clubhouse?
against his dad
Right.
with the Rangers. And if he wasn't in Kansas City right now, he'd probably be considered one of the best players in the
game.
league.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they've struggled over the last decade or
Right.
so. They're not getting any of the respect. They're starting to get it a little bit more.
Right.
And hopefully they can continue this and play well for the next month or so, get into the All-Star break,
Right.
and then we can start talking about
Sure.
contention and playoffs
Right.
and,
Sure.
and things of that nature. But the thing that I like is just the fact that it's competitive ball again.
Right.
The moves that they made on the pitching side have worked so far.
Yep.
Offensive line guys have struggled, but they've
course.
done enough because they pitch well enough
Sure.
Right.
to get away with it. And it's just fun to be able to pick up the paper. Or not paper.
I'm still old school paper. I'm still old school
That's
paper.
how old we are, Brian. That's how old we are.
But still, it's neat to pick that up and pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're in mid to
Yeah.
late May, and the Royals are still being
Relevant.
talked about in a positive light in the
course.
city.
Yeah, of
People
course.
haven't jumped off
Right.
the baseball bandwagon yet and
Yeah.
are ready for training camp.
Yeah, we're exactly.
They're into the Royals, and they're starting to. And if they play now, school's getting out this week, and you have graduations of colleges and high schools, and people are going to start focusing their attention to where am I going to spend my dollars this
Right.
summer?
Right.
Are we going to go to the lake this weekend, or the Royals are playing?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to stick around
Yes.
for a weekend.
Yes.
Maybe every other weekend we go to the lake.
Right.
But now we go to some
Yeah.
Royals games. Where
Yeah.
at June 1st, people were already writing off the Royals. And
Oh,
like,
my
okay, when's
goodness.
training camp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I mean, it was. It's a thing that they, like you said, it's got everyone excited, and it's fun to watch a Royals game at home. How difficult that may be for some, but to watch it, and I get excited to watch it. Which a year ago, 2 years ago, I mean, by opening
this
day,
time,
I'm done.
you were done.
Yeah.
You were done by this time.
Yeah.
And it's been a decade. They had the reunion this past weekend
Yes.
with the 2014 guys coming in town. And, the team's playing well. You have a little buzz
Right. Yeah.
going on in
Right.
the city. There's good things on the horizon
Sure.
that you can
Right.
feel
Sure.
Yeah.
with some of the young players. They signed Bobby Witt Jr. to an extension, so he's going to be here hopefully long term whenever they get into whatever stadium they're going to get into, wherever that's gonna
wherever that's going to be.
Yeah, so there's some good mojo going
Yeah.
Right.
with the team, and you hope that they can just, I'm not looking at playoffs this year,
Right.
but just stay competitive.
Of course. Of course.
And give us something later in the year to go out to the ballpark
Right.
and get happy about it. If they go on a good run and have a chance for a wild card or get the division, then so be it.
Sure.
But I want to be able to say the 100 lost seasons are in the past.
You're in the
For-
rearview mirror
for a
for
while.
sure. Yeah, in the rearview mirror for sure.
Do you see any comparisons at all? Like, we all know what happened in 14 and 15, and I know it was fun to watch those guys come up when Hosmer and Moustakas, some of those guys came to the system. We brought some guys to the team. Do you see any comparisons at all to the 14
The biggest
team?
comparison is just the fact they're winning games that they shouldn't win
Right.
right now and doing it in a fashion that you're like, that's not going to get it done all year.
Right.
You're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop.
Right,
Another
you're
shoe
waiting
drop.
because you're like, no, they got 5 guys not hitting right now. But those guys will get a hit in a key situation.
Yes, which is wild. They were
Like, a
talking
guy
about
may
that.
be 1 for his last 20.
Right.
Come
And
up
in
in
the
the
ninth inning.
seventh, eighth, and ninth inning, second and third and hit a 2-run home run, 3-run home run, do something like that. So it's been some weird things happening, and you have to have that.
Right.
Yeah.
And they pitch lights out.
Yeah.
I don't know how long the starters can continue to pitch like this.
Man, seeing
but
Seth
that saved them
Yes.
because the offense in spurts has done some good things.
Sure.
Right.
But it's basically been Salvi and Bobby Witt Jr.
Yes.
have been the consistent guys. And everybody else has not done much. And it's hard to win ball games when you because you can pitch around two guys in the lineup.
Of course, right. Like,
Yes,
like in high
absolutely.
school.
I'm wondering now, it's like, why are they throwing Bobby Witt Jr. strikes
Yeah.
and why are they throwing Salvi strikes right now?
Right.
What kind of scouting report do the other teams have?
Now, which is crazy. And so you go back to the 2014, and so it's amazing that Salvi's still playing at the level he is, and a lot of those dudes that came in, whether it's Moose,
they're done.
retired.
Well,
And he's
I
playing
think
at that level.
with Salvi, the big key is he missed a full year. He had surgery and missed a
Tommy
year.
John, right? I believe.
I'm not sure it was Tommy John or it was
No, so it's elbow.
was it
I think it's
Tommy John.
elbow.
So he missed a year and they had a COVID year.
Right. Right.
So he had 2 years where he didn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body.
Right.
Sure.
And I think that's helped him prolong
Right.
his career because he was catching way too much.
My goodness.
Oh gosh.
And now they're playing him.
at first, right? A little bit.
They're playing him at first.
Right.
They're DHing him.
Yep.
He's not catching as much. But I really think if you look back at his career, the COVID year, the 60-game season,
Sure.
Right.
and then I think 19 or one of the years he missed.
Yeah.
He missed a full season.
Right.
So that was able to.
And so
his
how
body
do you-
didn't absorb as many hits.
Yeah.
So, B-Mac, how do you manage that? Like, how would your dad manage if he wanted to go out? He wants to catch all 162.
But you can't.
Right.
So you have to bring in a quality backup catcher that you trust.
Yeah.
That can catch 45 games
Sure.
or so. And then you can DH him, and then you can give him some rest.
Right.
Yes.
But catching is a demanding position. Catching in this heat is a demanding position.
I can't imagine.
And the grind of having to mentally be in tune with your pitching staff.
Sure.
And then go out there and do some offensive things. That's why you see a lot of catchers' numbers
Right.
Of course.
tail off.
And
So
I wanna-
you just have to tell Salvi, no.
No,
Right.
you got to
Every
say
now and then.
no. Something I wanted to talk about you, and this is incredible, especially in this day, like you're talking about, long, like how many games we're playing. You played 150 games in 5 different seasons, which is wild. And the only time you didn't play at least 130 games was your rookie year, and then the strike season.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I was lucky.
That's amazing.
I was fortunate enough that I never had major injuries where I went on the disabled list
Right.
for any short. I never went on the disabled list the whole time I played, and then I knew how to take care of my body.
You have to say taking care of your body.
And he had to get lucky too,
Sure. Yeah.
because playing a demanding position in center field and running to the wall and diving and doing you're gonna get nicks and banged up a little bit. But I was lucky enough I was around some good people that taught me how to take care of my body.
Right.
Training staff on the teams I played with did a good job of getting me back out there when I was banged up. And I remember my dad telling me that, once you get established, other people on the team look towards you.
Sure.
You're an everyday player.
Of course.
So you can't take days off
Right.
when you're not feeling
Sure.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
You may not be 100%, but your 80% or your 70% may bring somebody else along
Yeah.
to play better. So because they're looking towards you.
Sure.
Of course.
So a lot of guys, if they're not feeling good, they'll tap out. Say no,
Right, yeah.
let me get a day or two.
Right.
And my dad said you don't have that luxury.
Sure.
Right.
Because if you do it, then other guys are going to do
Right.
it.
Of course. Of course.
And I always just thought of that just to, I needed to be out there.
Sure. Which leads me into was it 89 when Bo went down with an injury? So Bo was playing center field. 90. Yeah, probably had one of his better years. And they tried out Eisenreich in center. They tried out Wilson, and they brought you up. And you didn't relinquish that position. They moved Bo to left, correct?
Right,
Which is, once again, that's a
that's
thing
crazy.
that's
But
absolutely
it's
crazy.
something that happens. You get lucky. I was playing well in Double-A.
Yeah.
Bo goes down and gets hurt. I'm the next guy in line. They told me that you'd probably be up 2 or 3 weeks. And when Bo comes back and some of the other guys come back from injury, then you may get sent back down again. And, 10 years later, I was still around.
You never
That's
went back
just a cool
down.
thing that you came in and you got center field and they moved Bo to left. I mean, that's.
Yeah, Bo didn't want to play center anymore. He said
Okay.
it
I don't
was
play
too
center
taxing, and
Right.
he felt more comfortable playing left field. And,
Yeah.
so every time I run into Bo at some events, I thank him because if he didn't get hurt at that time,
Right, sure.
I could have got traded. Who knows what would have happened?
Sure.
So let me ask you something. We talked a little bit about Jamie bringing up how difficult it is to hit a baseball. And then thinking in those terms, you don't see as many guys nowadays switch hitting. And I remember when you come up and everybody talked about you leading off, and it was all BMAC center field leading off, switch hitting. Why is it nowadays you don't see as many kids switch hitting as back in those times?
Again, it's hard to hit from one side.
Yes,
and if you're a switch hitter, you're hitting from two. So you're two people.
Right.
And that's a lot of extra work.
Of course.
And that's something that you don't see as much today because it's harder to do.
Sure.
Right.
I was a natural right-handed hitter, but there's more. There were more left-handed pitchers in the league for a while at that time,
right.
And so I got to get a lot of bats from the right side, but left-handed started to feel more comfortable.
Sure,
because you had some pop in your bat from the left-hand side, didn't you?
More pop from the left side. I hit more home runs from the left side. As my career went on, I hit for how I averaged right-handed, but I had more home runs from the left.
See, that's what I thought because I remember when you were playing. I remember when you started hitting more from the left side. I remember you had some pop from that left side.
The majority, probably 80% of my home runs came from the left side. All my extra base hits, for the most part, were from
the right side.
From the left side.
Oh,
I did more damage from the left side, and I hit more singles from the right side.
Okay. And so be back after. So in Kansas City, and obviously when you were here, it's a baseball town, Kansas City. I mean, the Chiefs were not good then.
No, the Royals and Chiefs were not good at the same time.
Which has been it's been so ironic that they've never been good at the same time. But then you went from here, then you went to the Cubs, right?
Right. 3 years in Chicago.
Okay, and so that's a great baseball town. If they're winning,
great sports town.
I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then from there, the Mets. Right. And then Colorado and Toronto. So after, what was your favorite? Baseball town. I know you're a Kansas City guy, but
the good thing for me is I progressed from a smaller market to two bigger markets.
Right.
Sure.
So I got to play and figure out things my younger years here in Kansas City before I went to Chicago, and then before I went to New York and on to Toronto. I enjoyed Chicago because I like day games.
Sure.
Right.
I like day baseball. I like waking up. So that was my jam.
Sure.
Growing up here and playing for the Royals was great.
Yeah.
And being at home and familiar with everything.
Sure.
But waking up in the morning and going straight to the ballpark was like a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Right. And I love that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of nervous energy during the day.
Yeah.
And night games it felt like it was just so far away.
Sure. You're just sitting around.
And the day games, get up, grab breakfast, go to the ballpark, play a game, meet your buddies after the game, hang out for a little bit, go to dinner, and you're home by 9 o'clock.
Which is
it just felt like that's how baseball should be.
In summers in Chicago, there's nothing better. I always tell people
best city.
When the summer, Chicago is so sick in the summer.
For a 3 or 4 month period, they're hands down can't be any better city.
And the energy in that city, and the energy like during the summer, it's buzzing. I'm like, first couple of times visit when I was just in college or out of college, I'm like, man, does anyone work in this city?
But that's the most fun I had playing baseball was
I bet.
the 3 years in Chicago. And it was because of the day games.
Sure.
Right.
It was because I was like, wake up, go to work.
Yeah.
Come home, hang out. It's like you didn't have late nights.
No.
Right.
You could eat a good meal.
Yeah.
You could always find a good meal to eat.
So many good restaurants in Chicago.
Yeah. You weren't trying to eat somewhere at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Yeah. No, Jamie and I always try to go back a couple times. At least one time a summer, we try to go back and do a weekend in Chicago and catch our Cubs. We'll try to catch them on a Friday or Thursday, so we catch a day game.
I still have season tickets there.
Oh, do you really?
That's awesome.
Oh man, that is awesome.
I have a 40-game season ticket package.
I love that,
I try to get up there as much as possible.
That's awesome.
I love
That's a good time. That's a good time. Who would you say in your career was one of the pitchers who didn't keep you up at night, but you were thinking about? You were like, man, I'm going to get in the box. I'm going to get in the box. He's going to be
I didn't
filthy.
really worry about too many because I felt like if I had a good day, no matter what happened, so the nights that I had the most fun before games were when like Randy Johnson was pitching, Roger Clemens, those guys. Because I go out with my boys because I was thinking if they're on, I'm not going to get in. So I'm not going to worry about it. So that's the night to tie one on. Randy Johnson. If you strike out 3 times against Randy Johnson, you could do that with 12 hours of sleep or 2 hours of sleep.
That is awesome.
So the number 1 and 2 starters, that's when I went out.
Right. Because you knew who you're facing.
It's like, whatever. If they're on, they're going to get me. If I have a good day, I was like, Pedro Martinez, I'm going out to 3 o'clock in the morning. And my numbers were good against Pedro. But I didn't worry about, because those guys, if they were on, they were going to get you.
Yeah, they're going to get you. That makes sense. See, that's awesome.
So you had to bear down against the other guys.
Right.
You didn't make your money off the number 1 and 2 starters and the closers.
Of course.
You just kind of try to keep your head above water.
Right.
Sure.
And that's the way I looked at it. Some of those other guys, you had to get your sleep. You got to bear down.
Right.
It's like, I'm facing this guy. He doesn't throw it that hard. I got to bear down because I got to get my hits on. That's where I make my money right there.
Right. Yeah. So that 3, 4, and 5 starter, you would think, okay,
I got to get rich on this guy right here. You're not trying to get rich on Pedro.
No.
That's phenomenal.
No,
That's
is good. That is good stuff, B-Mac. Let me ask you a question just about, talk a little bit about this team right now. Do we think, in this market, and you see this area with, the Dodgers and the Yankees and all the money these guys spend. I'm watching what the Yankees are doing. They're 32-15 right now. And I look at where we are, 29-19, and they've got a, $280, $300 million payroll. Can the Royals still at this time, like they did in 14-15, can we go win a World Series with the payroll the way it is now? Or can we do
You
this?
just have to be a lot smarter in what you do.
Okay.
And the moves that you make. The Yankees can waste money.
Right.
They waste a lot of it.
Yeah, they can sign. They haven't won a World Series in a long time.
No, long time.
So, but they can sign 2 or 3 guys and it doesn't work.
Right.
And then they can sign 2 or 3 other guys to make up for that. In a place like here, Kansas City, Bobby Witt Jr. has to be a star.
Right.
When they sign Salvi to that long-term deal, Salvi has to be
the guy.
You can't afford to spend that kind of money and those guys just be Javi Baez right now with Detroit. That can't happen.
He's terrible.
So you have to have a lot of things go right. Of
course.
Your farm system has to do a great job. Every trade and things you make,
right,
you got to do it. But it can be done.
Right. I think that's the big thing.
I think World Series is asking much. Let's get in. Let's be competitive.
Right.
And then let's get into the postseason,
of course,
a few times, and let's try to maximize that. Where they did 2 years,
right?
Yeah,
but let's see if you can go a 3 or 4 year span when you have playoff baseball or close to playoff baseball, and then you see what happens once you get into the
playoffs. Of course,
absolutely, that makes sense.
But 2 years and then drop off for 10, that's not worth it.
No, I don't think it is either.
And I hope John Sherman has that, creates that culture and creates that winning longevity and making smart moves and making, good draft picks and getting guys and retaining the guys when they can without overextending because they know they can't get in the sleep. They can't swim in the waters.
They're trying to do some of those things and then, go back to the stadium. Most teams, when they move into a new stadium, they started to build the 2 or 3 years before they got to the stadium.
Sure.
Then they move into the new stadium, they hit the ground running.
Right.
And then you're good for a while.
Right.
You got a little period there where the newness of the stadium and all the excitement, and you have to maximize on that.
Right.
So, B-Mac, a question I've had, for somebody who's been around baseball and family around baseball for as long as you have, who were some of the better clubhouses you were around, and for whatever reason, whether it was veteran leadership or just, brotherhood or just stars leading by example, even from a kid when you're talking about some of these, and I want to talk to you about, get at you about some of those clubhouses you were in with Pops with the Reds, but what were some of the better clubhouses you were in your career and or as a child growing up?
Well, in my career, I think, the Royals, when I first came up to the Royals, it was a good clubhouse. The veterans took care of the guys that were coming up. They took care of the younger guys. And a lot of teams, from what I had heard, that the veterans were kind of standoffish because some of the younger guys were coming up and taking their jobs.
Of course.
So there was a divide between the veterans and the younger players and some of the guys in the coaching staff. I never saw that when I came up in Kansas City. So I was fortunate enough in Kansas City that, as a young player, most of the veterans were real good with us.
Right.
Sure.
And they made sure that we were included in everything that was going on.
Of course.
They would sit with us on the plane and bus rides and talk us through certain situations and invite us out to dinner with them.
Which is awesome.
It was a welcoming thing.
Sure.
And like I said, from some of the younger guys that we played against in the minor leagues, the teams that they came up with, they're like, the veterans don't even invite us to do that.
They don't do shit.
So I saw some good things here. Then moving on into Chicago, then I was more of a veteran player in Chicago, and I wanted to make sure that the younger guys felt.
Sure.
Because the way I saw it and the way it was kind of explained to me by some of the veterans when I was here in Kansas City, it's like the younger guys, they may be coming in and taking your job. But they're also coming in and making you money.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
And if the team plays well, everybody's taken care of.
Sure.
Right.
So
that makes perfect sense.
That guy may make you $1 million.
Right.
So you need to take care of him.
Right, of course.
Because he could take care of you and your family.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So make him feel home. Because the more you win, the more everybody gets taken care of. And I think that's throughout the three main teams I played for, the Royals, Cubs, and Mets. Clubhouses were real tight.
Yeah.
Guys were cool. Guys hung out together all the time. You did stuff off the field. You played golf together. You had your card games on the plane.
Right.
So it wasn't a big divide.
Right.
Where you had the position players hung out with position players only. The pitchers hung out with pitchers only.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't really that much of a divide. And here in Kansas City, the coaching staff even hung out.
That's cool. That's real cool.
So
Who was the manager?
That was something that I'd never seen before. The coaches hang out.
Who was the manager when you got here?
John Wathen was the manager.
Okay,
when
so
I got there.
John Wathen.
And and he played with your dad, right? Wathen played with your dad. Wathen played with your dad.
So John.
So I was very fortunate to be in good clubhouses.
Right.
Because you hear the horror stories
course.
about the other clubhouses, and I really didn't see too much of that at all. And then growing up with the Reds, I think my dad was around. You know, the Reds were in the playoffs 3 or 4 times when he was there.
Okay.
The 5 or 6 years he was up and down with the Reds. They were in the World Series twice. Wow. They just never got over the hump. They played the A's and the Orioles.
Right.
And then they got good in the mid-'70s when the Big Red Machine.
Sure.
But he was at the beginning of all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he was at the beginning of everything here in Kansas City.
Right.
From, he got here in 73, and then 76 was when they took off. So I think there's some parallels between what he experienced in Cincinnati and what he was able to bring experience-wise once he got established here in Kansas City. And then once they start winning, they won for almost a decade.
Right.
Absolutely. And your father had such a reputation for being such a hard-nosed player. Like, he was such a hard-nosed player. And they got the
He learned
slide.
those from the Reds.
Yeah, the slide, the Hal McRae slide.
But if you watch Pete Rose and you watch the way the Reds played, that's where that was taught. That was the Reds.
That was their mentality,
he brought
right?
that mentality that came from Cincinnati. A lot of the best Royals players came from other organizations.
Okay.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that. They were good organizations that made trades with,
of course.
Amos Otis was a Met, I think. He was with the Mets.
Cool.
Cookie Rojas came from another organization.
Okay.
My dad came from another organization. So some of the best players in Royals history came from other winning organizations and brought that culture. Right. They started to bring that culture to Kansas City.
Who were some of the Hall of Fame guys your dad played with in Cincinnati?
He played with Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, Joe Morgan.
Wow.
Man,
That's
all
amazing.
Hall of Famers right there.
And they were all young and
of course.
At the same time. So I was lucky to see some really good players.
That's amazing.
In Cincinnati. I don't remember much. I was young, but I do remember that, Sparky Anderson was my babysitter.
That's why.
Things like that.
I mean, those stories there, and the people you've been around, B-Mac, there's not a lot of people around that can say that.
No.
I'm very fortunate that I was around some good ball clubs.
Yeah.
Right.
The Reds are one of the, they're one of the premier National League teams. They haven't played well in a while, but they were one of the flagship franchises of they're one of the oldest franchises in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
And then the Royals and what they did in that run from 76 to 85.
Right.
If we would have been in the age of today with social media and everything like that, they could beat the Yankees a couple more times in the playoffs. They had a dynasty going.
Right.
Yeah. From every year from 76 to 85, almost every year they made the playoffs.
Yes.
They just couldn't get, they were really good teams that they couldn't get over the hump because the Yankees had really good teams.
Sure.
Listen, I'll tell you, back during that time, so I was born in 69. I'm aging myself right now. But that was my time when I started, baseball, and I'm playing my 3-2 baseball. And every summer, you're sitting there, and every year the Yankees make me cry because every time they're beating my Royals every time. And those 76, 77, those 78 series against those guys, man, those were some series with Reggie
my dad
Jackson.
said the worst team he went to the World Series with got him a ring. And that's not the down.
No, right.
Play it, but
that's being real.
He was on some really good teams with the Reds,
right?
That just couldn't beat the A's, who were dynamite, and I think the Orioles, and then the Yankees. They could never get past the Yankees in 75, 76, 77, 78.
Right.
They finally beat the Yankees in 80.
Yes,
and that felt like a World Series.
Right.
and then they were kind of flat against the
Phillies, right?
Phillies,
Yep.
but it takes so long to beat the Yankees, and then when they finally were able to do it in '85, he's like, "That's the worst team that I went to the World Series
He got the ring with.
He got the ring with.
or the postseason and got a ring with them."
And back then too, you could, it wasn't, you didn't have wild cards, so you could win 101 games and still be in second place
and miss the playoffs.
Winning 102 games.
Yeah, there were 90-win teams that's sitting at home, so it's a little bit easier to do things now. I think that Kansas City, after that 30-year stretch, the people that have been around and been baseball people here for a long time realize what they had with those teams of my dad's era.
Of course.
They kind of took those guys for granted.
Right, for sure. For sure.
Certainly did.
And then you go 30 years without anything, you're like, those guys were special.
Yeah.
And I think those guys have a little bit better, like there's more of an aura around that era now because people realized it doesn't happen all the time.
No, it doesn't happen.
They were really good. They just ran into a really good Yankees team.
Yes.
But those guys were special.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I like to do? I like to, nothing against the TV guys, but I like to listen to Denny still because it takes me back to being a kid. And before that, because the Royals were rarely on television. You either went to ball games or we listened
get your token game every now and then. Yeah.
And we were, we'd go out maybe twice a year. We had a big family.
Baseball was radio.
Yeah. Yeah,
it was radio, of course.
They painted a picture, and they painted a picture that made you feel like you were at the ballpark,
all the time.
And that's how you felt, like whether Pops was in the garage or having a beer outside, you just have a little transistor radio and listen to the call, and it was the best thing.
Baseball is still the best radio sport.
Yes, absolutely. I agree, 100%.
And you can use it as background noise or driving or whatever, but it's just the way the game flows.
Yeah.
Fits with
yes it is.
You can still
casual listening.
Summertime, you can still get in the car ride and know a game's on. Throw the game on. You be driving. You still listen to that Royals game, but listen to game of the week, whatever it's on. Still a lot of fun to do that. But like I said, and looking at, like I said, where we're at right now, this Royals team now, like you talked about earlier, really for us before we can start looking at what they're going to do or how we're going to keep competing. And they got to get to that All-Star break, don't they? They got to be competitive to get to that All-Star break.
I think that while the attendance isn't what people think it should be.
They were talking about that today.
This weekend, they're like, why didn't they didn't get 30,000? They had the reunion. They had all this. It's like, well, people still, that's 10 years, 2 months of good baseball doesn't offset 10 years of shit.
No, you're right. You're right.
So
that's true.
And the fan is cynical.
Right.
And I got my heart broken before. I thought this team was good, and I went out there and I spent my money. So I think if they're playing well to the All-Star break, then the second half of the season, people will go.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll go and they'll support this team. And even though people aren't going, they're watching.
Yes, they're watching.
They're listening.
Yes,
they're paying attention.
Yes.
So the people pay attention, and they like it, but they're not ready to go out there yet.
They're waiting for that other foot to drop and be like, okay, well, here it comes.
They're still waiting, but if you can get to the All-Star break, and they don't have to be 10 games over 500.
Right.
But just in contending.
Yeah.
If you get to the All-Star break and you're contending, the second half, I think people will start to.
Right.
And I think they play better teams and things like that too. So
I think Jamie and I talked earlier this year when we were watching them when they came out of the gates and stuff. And like you said earlier, you're like, before we start talking World Series, before we start talking all this stuff, you want to see them be able to compete and be able to compete towards the end of the year. Jamie and I were talking about some of the close games they were playing with Baltimore and stuff, like early in the year, knowing how good Baltimore was. And we're like, hey, we're not losing 3 games in a row, 5 games in a row, or we're not competing against the Orioles. They were always like, hey, took 2 or 3 or took 1 or 3, but competed in every game. So that was just such a big difference for me for the last couple of years. Like you said, the stuff we've seen the last several years. The pitching kept them and all that stuff early on, but it's fun to see them compete with Baltimore and some of those better teams, Toronto and stuff that had some good records early on, and to see them compete now more and keep that stuff closer. So hopefully they'll take that into July, get to the All-Star break, and then at the All-Star break, do they go try to make any
I think if
moves?
they are, they'll make some moves. But the thing about it is, with so many teams being able to make the playoffs now, and they've opened it up, and with the wild card, that nobody's really buried.
Sure. Right.
So everybody's holding on to guys.
Yeah.
So it's harder to make a deal.
Sure.
Right.
Because teams, we're just a week away from being in contention.
Right.
Like the Angels last year.
Yeah.
They went out and made all these moves.
Right.
they weren't a playoff team.
Right.
But their records showed that they were close.
Yeah, of
course.
And they went out and made moves, and it blew up in their face.
tried to keep-
but I think that's what happens now. You'll see some teams that they're really not playoff teams.
Yeah.
Right.
But their record says they're right around 500.
And the fan base kind of pressures them into
And they're like, well, if we play good for a week and a half, 2 weeks, we're right in the wild card.
Right.
So
right.
you have some teams hold on to players that they shouldn't hold on to.
Right.
And you'll see some moves made that probably wouldn't be made on a regular year, but it keeps more franchises involved.
Yeah.
And with that being said, B-Mac, what is your confidence level or comfort level with the overall state of baseball right now and where it's headed? And then it kind of ties into what the Royals organization is and how comfortable you are with where we are and the direction we're headed, but just overall in general baseball. I mean, I
think a lot of people are not fans of the commissioner of baseball, Manfred.
Right.
And some of the changes and some of the things that he's done.
Right.
Pitch clock and just some of the oddities.
Yeah.
I don't like
high bases.
I don't like the
high bases. You might have stole 100 a year.
Right. But I still don't like that. Like I don't like some of those rules.
Right.
I don't like the extra inning runner on second.
Right.
If you have the speed up rules, then why do you need to end the game quicker?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. It's great.
So we can debate a lot of that. I'm a purist, and the game is not for me anymore.
Right. This is excellent. Yeah.
The game is for the casual fan.
Mm-hmm.
The game is, the bells and whistles, and I don't care about a ribbon board at the stadium. I don't need to. But I can sit and watch the game.
Sure.
But the game is not for me.
Right.
That's not. They're not going after. They already have that fan.
Sure.
Right.
They're going after casual baseball fans.
Right.
And at some point, that may turn off the generation of fans that like the game for what it was.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So do they draw enough of the casual fans
Right.
to make it worth their while? Because it's going to be a drop off.
Right.
Because either people are getting a lot older and they're not coming out to games anymore.
Right.
And then you have the fan like me that's close to 60 years old.
Sure.
To where you like things similar to what they were.
Of course.
If they turn more towards being geared towards the ADD generation, then you might.
It's almost like jock jams when they go out there and shoot 3-pointers from
and all the crazy stuff. So they risk losing some fans, but I think they've weighed that risk.
Right.
And they got enough people on the other side that it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And the revenues keep going up.
Sure, of course.
And they got to figure out their TV deal.
Yeah.
We should be able to watch a game.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And
Right now.
especially for
Shouldn't
the
be
older
blocked out in your
generation.
city.
Yeah. Like my pops is,
Half the
is
city should be able to watch Royals games.
Yes. Sure.
Without having to stream it
Right.
and or watch it on your phone because you have T-Mobile and you can get the free MLB, but you don't want to hurt your eyes watching it. You should be able to watch the
Sure.
game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think the game is strong globally.
Yeah.
Some of the best players in Major League Baseball now come from Japan,
Right.
where they're baseball crazy,
Right. Right.
and they're spending money
Yes.
to watch Ohtani.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to meet him, B-Mac, Ohtani?
No.
Okay.
But I saw them play in Chicago.
Okay.
So I saw the Dodgers play earlier, and wanted to get a chance to see him
In person,
because I thought he was going to get suspended.
Yeah.
I wanted to see him.
I wanted to check this
Right.
out.
But Latin America, the game is thriving,
Right.
and Japan, Korea,
Right.
the game is thriving. More of our stars are coming from other areas,
Right.
which are, I think that helps all the melting pot of baseball.
Of course.
So there's more good things than bad.
Right.
You can be cynical and nitpick if you want to with anything. The fan base has changed because of how you receive your information.
Right.
And I think baseball and all sports are trying to find a way to best serve that. You're seeing games in Europe. There's a London series almost every year.
Yeah.
And I think there's some teams that played in Mexico City
Yes.
this year.
Yes.
So there's different
I think
things.
the Cubs are next year playing in Mexico.
There are different things that the league is trying to do. Some working, some not.
Right.
I like the World Baseball Classic.
Yes. Very cool. I love that. I love that.
That was last year, so that was a cool deal.
And it's-
so they've done some things.
Yeah.
They've done more things right than wrong, but the things they've done wrong, you pile on.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
I think Kansas City's proven too in 14 and 15. If they get to the All-Star break, make some additions, and they're there and they're competing, I think we'll start seeing the stadium start getting more intense.
People will go.
Right.
But they need a little bit more to latch on to.
A little bit more proof of the pudding.
If they can get to 15, 16 games over 500, then people will start believing. 10 is like that number where like, well, maybe let's see what happens.
Right.
But if you get to like 15, then you're like, okay,
they're playing some ball.
You don't fluke into getting 15 games over 500.
Right.
Absolutely not. No.
Right.
And you have a bad week at 15 and you're still at 10.
Right,
Yeah.
of course.
That's still 10 looks good, 15 looks a lot better.
Right. That's awesome. Well, B-Mac, listen, brother, we appreciate you taking time out of your day and your schedule to come be a part of
So
Love Your
much
Bro
fun today,
podcast.
man. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
man,
So much
brother. We
fun,
appreciate
man.
it so much, man.
Thank you very much.
Always
And like
love,
I
you know
said,
that.
It's good seeing you
Good to
guys.
see you, man, for real.
It's always good talking ball, and
Yeah.
especially when the Royals are playing well.
Yeah.
That's exactly. B,
Absolutely.
thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.